Hi, I'm Christian Garnett. I'm here with my co-host, Jamie.
Hello.
Who doesn't get a last name. And today, you are watching our new show, which is called Tokusatsu Means Special Effects. The basis of this show is that I'm going to discuss Tokusatsu films and shows with Jamie. He is more knowledgeable on the subject than me. I only recently got into Tokusatsu in the past 2 years or so. And Jamie, like I said, is more experienced. So Jamie, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on your show. Although I guess I'm a co-host.
You're the co-host.
So this is our show.
This is our show.
Thanks for making this a thing.
Isn't it so cool how I didn't silence my phone? But yeah, you know what?
Such a hack.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you were forced to come on the show with me. So I have some questions here.
Okay.
This is a very loose interview, podcast show. It's not really an interview since we're co-hosts, I guess.
It's a discussion.
It's a discussion. It's a discussion. All right. So I have my list of questions right here. And I just have to say, expert is maybe not the right word. It's not like you went to school for Tokusatsu, but you are knowledgeable about Tokusatsu.
Know a few things.
And I think that's really cool. Because you don't meet a ton of people in your everyday life that are into, first of all, Japanese media, and then specifically Japanese like monster movies and superhero movies and stuff like that. You know, like
it's a niche market.
It's very niche.
And a lot of it doesn't get distributed in America. So like bootlegs are still a thing. They were a thing in the 70s and 80s, and they are still very much a thing now. Fortunately, with a lot of streaming services like, what am I thinking of? They play a lot of anime, but there's a lot of Tokusatsu stuff in there.
I don't know.
And certainly you see like a smattering of Japanese sci-fi, live-action sci-fi on Amazon Prime. But it's still pretty much underground, even despite the popularity of what Saban did with Super Sentai Zero Rangers and turning that into Power Rangers. You know, you would think like that would be a renaissance, like a second renaissance, at least in the like the Western world of exploring Japanese science fiction.
Yeah, but then there's so many people that don't even know that Power Rangers is an adaptation of like Japanese Sentai.
Those people wallow in ignorance, and it's really sad to watch.
Truly.
Crunchyroll, that was the app, the streaming service that I was.
They are missing so much stuff, though. I wanted to watch.
I think they have everything Ultraman related.
Oh, I think they do.
Oh, except for the new series, which is on Netflix.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to watch Akiba Ranger, the parody one.
Okay.
That's not on there. So I was like, fine, I'm going to watch Kamen Rider X Aid, which is one that I did not watch the first couple episodes legally. I wanted to, but there were no avenues for me to do that.
Right.
So I checked, so I watched a couple, then I checked Crunchyroll, and I was like, maybe Crunchyroll has it. Neither of the Sentai things I wanted to watch were on Crunchyroll. It's so annoying.
Yeah. Sometimes people will post that kind of stuff. For example, the Yamato films, Space Battleship Yamato.
I actually haven't seen
films are on YouTube.
those.
And it's
A
like
lot of cool stuff is on YouTube.
They are there until they get a copyright strike, and then or just. I'm sure they get. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, there's an algorithm in YouTube that searches for third-party content, and the copyright holder gets notified of that. So then YouTube has to wait for that response. If the response is take it down, it gets taken down. But you have to wonder, and of course, this is millions and millions of files that are in YouTube's library.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have everything. It can't have like every Super Sentai show that's ever been made. Yeah. So yeah, maybe some of that stuff is on there until someone complains.
Until it gets noticed. Like I think it's funny when you try to find a show on YouTube, like Akiba Ranger, they'll have like a 3-part upload of an episode, but only part 2 is still there or something.
Yeah,
you run into that a lot.
That's weird.
So the first question I have written here.
Oh,
I do have questions. And this is the best place to start any interview, is the beginning. How did you get into tokusatsu things? Like, what introduced you? Was it did a person show you? Did you come across it by chance? Were you even aware it was Japanese at the time?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
My first exposure to tokusatsu was through Kaiju films. Of course, we didn't call it Kaiju back in the late 70s, early 80s. But there was a show that was broadcast out of Boston called Creature Double Feature.
Okay.
And they would play two like monster films. And they would be either like two Japanese monster movies or a Japanese monster movie and like a gothic horror film or like a Universal horror film or something from Hammer Horror Studios. And that's what you would watch. You would watch a film, a Godzilla film, usually from the Showa era, but not including the 1950s version. So like, whenever Godzilla or Gamera would fight another monster, like those are the films that they would play because those would be more exciting to a young audience. So, and I was excited by them. And back then you had to go to, just like we were talking about before, like, where you're forced to go to the pirate market, in order to watch the stuff that doesn't get widespread distribution in the United States. You had to go to like specialty shops. And the specialty shop that my parents would take me to was Mr. Big's Toyland in Waltham, on Moody Street, Waltham. I'll have to show you the commercial for it because it's great.
I would love to see that.
Are you tired of walking through enormous toy stores with invisible sales help and then being given a rain check? Then go to Mr. Big Toyland, 399 Moody Street, Waltham. They've got it all. Huge selections of Fisher-Price toys for the little ones, every game imaginable for kids of all ages. And for the collector, an incredible selection of new, hard-to-find, and antique dolls, even rare G.I. Joes. F&B, Ginny, Madame Alexander, just to name a few. So go see Mr. and Mrs. Big at Mr. Big Toyland, 893-8582.
But no, I was very, so, I'd buy Gamera and Godzilla toys because that was the only place you could buy them. You couldn't buy Kaiju figures at, like, Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Just weren't available, and the internet wasn't a thing yet. So, that was really cool to be part of that very niche market. And I was very aware that this was made in Japan because they were dubbed. Some would say poorly, but
I think it adds to it.
Yeah, but no, it was clear that the actors, for the most part, were Japanese. Of course, during those films, they would have sometimes a token American actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really cool. It really like excited the imagination of an 8-year-old Jamie at the time, and I think I've loved that subgenre ever since.
That's awesome. What was the first one you remember seeing?
Yeah, you'd think it would be the 1948 Godzilla, but it wasn't. I want to say it was, I'm trying to remember the name. This is the movie that they introduced Jet Jaguar in, or Jet Jaguar.
Okay.
Or Jet Jaguar. Jet Jaguar, Jet Jaguar.
Not Space Amoeba.
No, it was...
Wasn't he introduced
Godzilla versus Megalon.
Yeah.
Although, curiously, there is another kaiju in that. Is it Gigan?
I don't know.
So Godzilla fights Gigan and Megalon, and Jet
Jaguar shows up.
Jet Jaguar shows up and eventually teams up with Godzilla. But the film itself is just called Godzilla versus Megalon.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I would say...
You get 4 monsters.
The original titles...
You go in expecting 2.
Yeah. Well, the original titles are always like much more exciting. Like giant monsters, all-out attack, that kind of stuff. So I wonder what the original title was. I would put money on that Godzilla versus Megalon was not the direct translation, that it was much more interesting.
Like, you mean the Japanese title?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. You might be right. Maybe it is like an all monsters attack type situation. Like it had a different subtitle.
Well, it was cool because like you had a reptile, like a bird, dinosaur, kaiju fighting Godzilla, and you had like a giant beetle kaiju fighting Godzilla, and then Godzilla, his comrade was a giant autonomous robot. So it's like everything that a young boy is fascinated by.
I haven't seen that one. So so Jet Jaguar doesn't have a pilot. It's an AI?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. And he programs himself to grow the size of Godzilla.
Just a bit of programming.
That's the only explanation that you get. It's like, oh, he must have programmed himself to grow to enormous size, or whatever the line was. And it was just like, okay, yeah, sure.
That's amazing. I mean, why not?
But also, that was their way of saying, like, the studio at the time, Toho, because Ultraman was also popular. So
Right.
that was like, oh, kids like Ultraman. Let's make an Ultraman character.
Yeah, they look pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say it was part of a
yeah.
contest too. I want to say it's like, we want someone to draw, design the next, monster,
Yeah.
or like, giant robot or whatever. And the contest winner, their design was used in the movie.
That's awesome. I did not know that. I'm going to look into that more. I'm glad we're recording this because there's a couple things you've mentioned that I need to do research on.
Make sure you fact check me and delete anything I say. that
There
is
will be like
untrue.
lower thirds that are like, this is not true.
Jamie is a liar.
Like an MTV thing where it comes up and it like gives you the facts. Okay. What are some of your favorites? Doesn't have to be kaiju specifically, tokusatsu in general.
Yeah, sure. Xeram, I think is really cool. That's about a
Xeram.
female bounty hunter that comes to Earth hunting an escaped extraterrestrial criminal, full of really great martial arts and special effects. Xeram. I believe
I've
that's
never
how
even
that's
heard of
pronounced.
that.
It's
Sounds
really
cool.
good.
Kind of sounds like Fooly Cooly.
I believe there's 2 live-action movies and an anime series. Yeah, so that's really neat. I've watched the original Zeo Rangers.
Okay.
So I would definitely put that on the list.
Right.
Did you say it had to be movies or just?
No, it can be shows.
Okay.
Like, Sentai stuff.
Yeah.
Just we adjusted our glasses at the same time. You see that? We're in sync.
I want to say one of my favorite Godzilla movies is Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, or Godzilla versus Ghidorah, the original title. It's so bizarre, especially in relation to the other Godzilla movies. Like it has a weird psychedelic style to it. Like sometimes you'll be watching a scene and then it just turns into like an animated movie for like a minute and then goes right back. It's very strange and I love it.
Maybe that'll be one of the next ones I watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't clear, I am. Well, I think I said this in the beginning, but I am much newer to the tokusatsu genre. But that's cool. All right. So I'll definitely check those ones out.
Sure.
Okay. Recently, what have you watched recently? It doesn't even have to be like recently, but most recent that you've watched. If that makes any sense.
Live action.
I'm assuming you've watched at least a couple new ones since Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm coming up with, unless you count the legendary Godzilla films, which of course are not. I don't think they're even co-productions, are they?
I don't know. I count that on a technicality.
Because is it tokusatsu if it's not produced in Japan? Well, that's that's the age-old thing. Like age-old is the Scott Pilgrim comic book manga. It's in the manga style, but it was.
But it was made in Canada by I think Korean man. So it's not. If anything, isn't manhwa. Manhwa is Korean comics.
Okay.
So if anything, it would be a manhwa like tankobon.
Okay.
However, we're probably getting some things wrong. I think tankobon is like the format that manga comes in, like the book.
Oh, yeah,
is like a tankobon.
Yeah, like it's like this phone book sized. Do you
Well,
remember?
that'd be an
you know what a
omnibus.
phone book is?
I do know what a phone book is. I'm not that young.
Okay.
Although I can't say I've seen one in a very long time.
Yeah, they're extinct.
So you think most recently the newest ones you've seen have been
The last
Shin Godzilla and like the American legendary films?
the last kaiju film I saw was Godzilla vs. Kong.
Okay.
The last Tokusatsu film I've seen is likely Shin Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla was really good.
Yeah, very good.
Very good movie.
It was good to return
Film.
Godzilla to his horror roots, right? Because like
was a
that was a
scary movie.
legitimately scary movie.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised that they can pull that off because Godzilla, like it's kind of like how like Rogue One and the Kenobi series like made Darth Vader scary again. It's like how do you take this character that's been parodied
Yeah.
to the nth degree and like bring back that original feeling of like dread that surrounded them, and with a good writer and a good director, you know, you can do that.
He was definitely scary in Rogue One. Haven't seen Kenobi yet, but I will. But I will.
Spoilers.
I know he's in it.
Okay.
So for me, the most recent one I watched was maybe also Shin Godzilla. Well, actually, same as you. I watched Shin Godzilla, and then I watched the Legendary films, which I didn't enjoy. I loved Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla was amazing.
Yeah.
That final shot was terrifying. We've discussed Shin Godzilla before. That's actually, I think, how I found out he even liked that kind of stuff. Well, actually, these were in his office. That's where I stole them from. But anyway, yeah, those American ones, I'm not really a fan of. Just too much focus on the people. I just wanted to see the monsters fight. The versus Kong had way too many human characters. I can deal with a human like subplot. Like in Son of Godzilla, I actually thought what the humans were doing was interesting. Like their thing where they were trying to like alter the weather and accidentally kept waking up all these monsters. I thought that was cool.
Sure.
But yeah, the versus Kong, there were just so many characters. I don't even know why 11 was in the movie. She just like
11. That's the actress's name.
That's her name, 11. She like got the podcast guy and then went to the place and then broke the machine and then went home.
Yeah.
It was stupid.
Well, because general audiences,
Wanted to see 11?
right? Like, if I was describing a film to my parents, probably the first, you know, if I said, "Oh, I'm going to see Godzilla vs. Kong," you know,
Who's
one
in
of
it?
them would say, "Oh, who's in that?"
Yeah.
You know, not just like, "Oh, are there any other kaiju?" No. But my nerdy friends would ask that.
Yeah.
It's like,
If it were
"Oh,
me, I'd be like, who directed it? Like what's it about?
Yeah.
You know. But I guess a lot of people just care about like who's in it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, if we said
Well,
to Mike, you know, our mutual friend, you know, like, "Oh, I'm going to see Godzilla vs. Kong," he would probably say something like, "I hope they introduce Mecha King Ghidorah in this one."
He would
And
say
not,
something like that.
I hope an actor, at least one actor from Stranger Things, is in this. You know, it's interesting
You
that
think he would say that?
no.
I don't think he would say that.
It's interesting that legendary films are criticized for how many scenes with you know actors, you know, the human scenes.
Yes.
But that has been a thing in the franchise.
I know.
Like I remember
The first one, Godzilla doesn't even show up in the first one until like half an hour into the movie or something.
right, because
The first, like the black and white one.
because the only seeing Godzilla in like these brief shots makes him scarier.
Yeah.
But you know, like my child mind remembered Destroy All Monsters as being like just a 2-hour monster mash.
Right.
And it's not that at all. Like there are some great kaiju fights in it. And that's like, it was like kind of like the Avengers of the Toho kaiju films where like everyone shows up. You know, King Ghidorah, Anguirus, Rodan, Godzilla, Minya, Mothra, and but it's like, yes, the final battle is very exciting, and there's lots of scenes of these the monsters like destroying cities, but there's this whole spy extraterrestrial subplot that is like 80% of the movie.
Yeah.
And like you don't remember that. You just like,
Just
oh,
think about
Destroy
the
All
cool
Monsters is
monsters.
just constant fighting, but it's really not. It's still I would still highly recommend it. Yeah, it's, You've seen Final Wars, I assume?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's on the list.
Yeah.
I have a lot of catching up to do. There's so many. There's so many.
See Destroy All Monsters and Final Wars in one day if you can.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of parallels that you can draw between those.
Okay. You just reminded me. Speaking of like watching multiple Godzillas in one day, I watched. What is it? I actually wrote it down right here. Godzilla Raids Again, like Godzilla 2. You know, the second Godzilla film. It's okay. It's not bad.
Yeah.
But I thought the movie was done halfway through the movie. Like when they like kill a monster and everybody like kind of goes back to work. Like they kind of go home. And I'm like, oh, the movie's over. That was a pretty good ending. And then like Godzilla shows up again. The whole plot like catches up again. And it's so weird. I hated that movie. But in the same day, I watched Godzilla. I watched Son of Godzilla. And even as stupid as that movie is, it didn't like slow down. It didn't come to a stop.
Okay.
It just kept going. So I was interested.
Well, that's
As silly as it was.
that's what good writing and good directing does for a film.
Yeah.
Or by extension, bad writing and bad direction. It's just like this. The pacing is all over the place.
Okay. So I have two questions left generally. So you've mentioned that you've seen all of the legendary films, the American films.
Yes.
How do you feel about those?
I enjoyed them. I can't say that I've rewatched any except for, what was it called? Kong Skull Island? Yeah, because I thought
That's the only one I haven't seen before.
I think that's still my favorite. And I had a blast watching Godzilla vs. Kong.
Everybody likes the one I haven't seen.
It's just, there's some really cool, unique monsters in that. The battles are really cool. Most of them take place during the day, so you can see what's going on. That was a major issue I had with, what was the one where the legendary Godzilla fights King Ghidorah?
King of All Monsters.
Yes.
Yeah, isn't there like smoke around like the entire movie?
Always.
Like you can barely see the
Smoke.
monsters.
Or snow.
Like rubble.
Yeah, it's just like I can't see what's going on. All the battles that I remember took place
Yeah.
at night.
Yeah.
I mean, I know why it's done. So like, to make the special effects more believable. But it's not visually interesting.
Yeah.
But whereas Kong Skull Island, like everything is just, like it takes place in a jungle. There's so many scenes during the day. Everything is just rich with color. Lots of fights happen in like longer wide shots, so you can really like watch the action and see exactly like how these monsters are attacking each other. Yeah, that would still be my favorite because there's only Godzilla, King of Monsters, Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla vs. Kong, correct?
Yeah. Although I'm sure they're making another one.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I probably won't see it. Actually, probably not going to see it. But speaking of the like blocked out monsters, like the nighttime and the dust and all that. I would almost say it was unnecessary, but they used it cool. They used it in a cool way one time, and that was when Godzilla, when they're having their final battle, and like everything gets covered up in smoke in that typical like anime fashion. You don't know who the victor is.
Sure.
And King Ghidorah comes out first, and it's just his head, and you're like, oh, he won, or he's about to go back in and attack again. And then the smoke clears, and he's like getting eaten by Godzilla.
Yeah.
That was so cool. That was the only time I thought the all of that like smoke and blocking and stuff. They did it cool in that one scene.
Right, because describe another memorable scene from that fight.
I can't.
Right. Yeah.
I can't at all.
It's just a blur of just flailing and lightning and fire, and it's just like, okay, that was cool. I think it's like watching a Michael Bay Transformers film. It's like I can't describe what happened in any of those movies because it's.
I just think about the time that Megatron like grabbed Starscream as he was flying away and like pulled him down. I thought that was. But yeah, I can't think of anything that happened in those movies.
Right. It's just too much, and it's the shaky cam and the close angles during what should be exciting fight scenes, the overly complex designs.
Oh yeah. Although this is slightly off topic. I guess like giant robots or Transformers like
We're still talking about Japan.
It's still Japanese. But I liked in that one that takes place in the 80s, I think, the one with John Cena in it, like Bumblebee, that's what it was called.
That was the best.
They, they kind of toned down the crazy designs. That was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, they were closer to the G1 designs, if you know what that is.
I do.
Back in my day, Transformers the movie made
wasn't
in
gonna say it.
1986 was da bomb.
I wasn't going to say it.
Okay.
All right, last thing.
Okay.
Last thing. So I'm not super up to date with like upcoming tokusatsu things, and I'm still catching up on the classics, the older stuff. But as I already stated, I loved Shin Godzilla. It's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. Definitely top 10 somewhere in there. And they're coming out with Shin Kamen Rider and Shin Ultraman. I think Shin Ultraman just came out in Japan.
What does Shin mean?
I think it means new and also God.
Okay.
I think. I believe it means new and God.
So it's like a way of flavoring an existing IP,
Yes.
existing franchise.
Well, and they're all either directed or worked on by Hideaki Anno,
Okay.
who did Shin Godzilla, but he also did Evangelion, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
That's interesting. So it says, I thought it was Evangelion, but I could be wrong.
I think it's Evangelion. I think you're right.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So he's putting his own unique creative stamp on these franchises.
Yeah, there's actually references to Evangelion in Shin Godzilla. The moment where the nuke, not the nuke, but like the missile drops on his eye and he does that like 2-eye shut thing and there's like a click, that's from Evangelion. And then also one of the songs from Evangelion plays during the... You almost witnessed me explaining that some Evangelion music was used in Shin Godzilla. But our camera ran out of memory, causing the talk show to be cut short by about 2 minutes. But you didn't miss too much. Basically, Jamie and I just talked about how tokusatsu media is really cool and that I need to watch more of it. We might do another episode someday, but first I need to watch more Godzilla stuff. Anyway, I'm Christian, my co-host was Jamie, and tokusatsu means special effects. I looked up the direct translation of tokusatsu. Do you know what that means?
Japanese science fiction or special effects?
It just means special effects.
Huh, okay.
So tokusatsu, in the context of a movie, just means special effects film. Which is weird because that's like all films. And now when people think of tokusatsu, they think of practical effects, not digital special effects.
Right.
Which is funny, it's almost like it inverted.
Well, but a film like Shin Godzilla, which is, no one would argue that it's not a tokusatsu film.
Is all
Godzilla
digital?
in that is CGI.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way. Hi, I'm here with Jamie. Nope, let me start over.